In the Brookfield, Ohio jail, that is Jennifer Miller.
I don't need to go in there.
You do.
With that police throw in the cell, Miller has been knocked unconscious. Here's a ceiling camera view. Following this incident, Miller filed a federal lawsuit accusing police of excessive force and violating her constitutional rights. Now, the police are paying up. As the headline says, settlement reached in Brookfield excessive force case. Miller, a Brookfield resident, originally sought $1 million in compensatory damages plus punitive damages, citing physical injuries, emotional distress, and legal and medical expenses. The lawsuit also claimed Brookfield Township failed to properly train officers on arrest procedures and use of force. Miller requested court-ordered policy changes to prevent future misconduct. All of this began in November 2023, just after 11 o'clock at night, when Miller was pulled over.
You already know I'm up. You know that.
I
know.
could tell.
Police arrested her for operating a vehicle while intoxicated and brought her to the police department.
Stop.
I'm not done nothing to you.
Go in there.
When Miller refused to go into the cell, Officer Cody Dean threw her to the floor.
I don't need to go in there.
You do.
Miller filed a formal police complaint against Officer Dean. The police department then conducted an internal investigation and cleared him. The police found the incident was a combination of, quote, Miller's intoxicated state, resistance to entering the cell, and the officer's one-handed pull and push contributed to the fall and injury. The internal report also stated she was wearing what appeared to be a high-heeled boot with a glossed heel, which would have added to her feet coming out from under her. With police blaming the tumble in part on Miller's footwear, the Ohio woman then brought a federal civil rights lawsuit. She said she'd been shoved to the ground in a martial arts-style throw, knocking her unconscious. According to Miller's lawsuit claim, she was not behaving aggressively, nor did she pose any threat to the officer. It says she suffered substantial physical pain, loss of daily function, mental anguish, emotional distress, injury to reputation, and incurred substantial costs, including legal fees and medical treatment and fees. Some or all of these injuries may prove permanent. The settlement and payout by the Brookfield, Ohio police has not been publicly disclosed. However, legal experts said Miller had a strong case. According to settled law and court rulings, police are not allowed to use force to take a suspect to the ground unless that person poses an imminent physical threat to themselves, a witness, or the police. Furthermore, the courts have ruled that saying no to a police officer's instructions about going into a cell or a police car or any form of custody does not justify physical force. The Brookfield Police Department and its chief Aaron Kazowitz are not talking about the settlement with Miller. A year ago, after the internal police investigation cleared Officer Cody Dean, Chief Kazowitz acknowledged that officers are required to handle prisoners with a respectable manner and with due care. The chief added that Officer Dean may not have handled the prisoner with due care. However, it is our belief that he was following policy. The chief also said, "We've never had an incident like this in our holding area. The intent of the officer was not to cause her harm, and it is a tragic accident, and we are going to do what we can moving forward to assist with making sure this doesn't happen to anybody else." According to a department press release from 2024, the department is now keeping handcuffs on prisoners until they get into the holding cell instead of outside or in the waiting area. Also, the police department apparently looked at installing different flooring in the booking area to, quote, keep from slippage. With all due respect to the Brookfield Police Department and Chief Aaron Kazowitz, here's an idea. Have all of your officers engage in de-escalation training and teach your officers the law. Throwing anybody to the ground because they mouth off or say something you don't like is outrageous. The courts have long held that everybody, even prisoners, have a right to tell an officer to do that thing that is anatomically impossible. If a cop can't handle verbal insults and quickly chooses physical force, that person should not be a police officer. Period. Let a judge and jury decide if somebody is resisting or engaged in obstruction, and then the court can decide if a punishment is warranted. But police, just because they are frustrated, are not entitled to throw somebody to the ground and knock them out. And in this case, the Brookfield, Ohio Police Department is lucky that Jennifer Miller didn't get more seriously hurt and cost the department even more money in a financial settlement. And by the way, Most police departments do not pay the financial settlements themselves. They carry insurance for cases like this. However, the taxpayers pay for the police insurance. And you can bet that insurance premiums being paid by the city of Brookfield, Ohio, have now gone up dramatically. In any case, kudos to Jennifer Miller for having the courage to take on the local police. Miller pleaded guilty to operating a vehicle while intoxicated, the initial reason she was arrested. She paid a fine and had her license suspended for a year. In other words, she took responsibility for her actions. And that seems to be more than the Brookfield Police Department has done. Because while the police have paid to settle the excessive force case, they are still refusing to take any public responsibility or publicly admit they did anything wrong.
Why are you guys bothering me?
You're parked. I'm not parked. Come see, stop. Just relax.
Why are you telling me I'm detained? What's wrong with you guys?
In San Francisco, on the left, that is Officer Brett Hernandez. On the right is Ibrahim Shahiber. He has been stopped for leaving his car in a no parking zone.
You're parked in the red. Not in the fire hydrant.
I stopped.
Yeah, but you're parked right now.
I'm
Okay, so
not.
we're not arguing the law of it, but
Okay,
you're
I'm
detained
going
right
to
now.
go move my
No,
car.
you're gonna stay right here.
They would not let him move his car. Shahiber was there to pick up a sandwich at the sub shop on that corner.
You're staying right here at the DU and make sure who you are, and then you can go.
Oh my god. You guys are something else right now. For what? I'm not detained. You didn't do anything.
I just explained
No,
to you.
but that's not against the law. I'm allowed to stop.
You're not allowed to stop.
My hazards are on. I'm allowed to stop.
You're not.
You're not allowed to stop right
So
there.
where,
You're parked.
so where does it say that? It
Alright,
doesn't
dude.
say that allowed to
Relax.
stop. Don't touch me.
I'm gonna
please.
touch you. You have any weapons on you?
Please don't. You guys need to stop this.
I'm at- dude, calm
Why are you
down.
guys? So why are you guys doing this thing?
Because I'm about to pass you.
Look, you want? Look, I have nothing on me. You would like my ID? I'll
Let
cancel
me
my
pass
ID.
it to you real quick.
No, you do not have my
Yeah.
permission.
You don't, I don't need your permission.
Yes, you
I
do.
Put your
Here's
hands
my
up.
ID. Here's my ID, and it's all that I'm giving you. You have no right to touch me.
Yes, I do.
No, you do not. Where is that written down? Here's my ID, sir. You can have that.
I'll be back to you in a second.
I mean, do not touch me. You do not have the right to touch me.
I'm
No,
telling
you
you right
do
now.
not have the right
Do
to
you have any
touch me.
weapons on you?
I have nothing on me.
Turn
You do
around.
not. No,
Put
you
your
do
hands on
not
your
have
head.
the right to touch me.
Turn around.
You do not have the right to
Turn
touch
around.
me. You do not have the right to touch me. You do not have the right to touch me. You do not have the right to touch me.
During the police takedown, Shahiber says the police tore his shirt, scraped his face and side, and hurt his hip. The officers eventually let him go with a citation. Now, 3 years after this 2019 incident, following multiple hearings and internal reviews,
Don't touch me.
Officer Hernandez has been suspended for 10 days.
You do not have the right to touch me. You do not have the right to touch me.
The San Francisco Police Commission found that Officer Hernandez's actions were damning and disturbing. Quote, "If Shahiber can be mistreated this way by the police under the circumstances of this case, then anyone on the street may be subject to a pat search on flimsy grounds. This case involves poor policing that resulted in a violation of Shahiber's rights. But the potential damage of police misconduct, such as that of Officer Hernandez, implicates the community as a whole."
Why are you telling me I'm detained? What's wrong with you guys?
You're parked in the red.
I'm
Not in the fire
parked.
hydrant.
I stopped.
Yeah, but you're parked right now.
Shahiber is in the midst of a civil lawsuit against Hernandez and the city of San Francisco. In the meantime, internal documents raised new questions about Officer Hernandez and the police investigators.
My hazards are on. I'm allowed to stop.
You're not.
You're not allowed to stop right
So
there.
where,
You're parked.
so where does it say that?
Alright, dude.
During the internal review, Officer Hernandez told investigators that Shahiber was constantly reaching into his pockets and that baggy clothing can conceal weapons. Quote, "It's my training and experience that this is an indicator that somebody might have weapons on their persons, and for the safety of myself and my partner, fear of our safety, I conducted a pat search." But the San Francisco Police Accountability Report found that during the exchange, the only time Shahiber reached into his pocket was when he gave the officers his identification.
Here's my ID. Here's my ID, and it's all that I'm giving you. You have no right to touch me.
Yes, I do.
No, you do not. Where is that written down?
Furthermore, as the video shows, he did not act violent, and there were no bulges that would indicate a weapon.
No,
telling
you
you right
do
now.
not have the right
Do you
to
have any
touch me.
weapons on you?
I have.
Officer Hernandez also told investigators that Shahiber attempted to flee, but not according to the video.
You do not have the right to touch me.
And the internal report found that Officer Hernandez made statements that were simply not true. However, the suspension of Officer Hernandez was only for violating Shahiber's Fourth Amendment rights, and internal police investigators apparently decided not to follow up on Officer Hernandez's dishonesty. and Officer Hernandez has never been formally accused of dishonesty. This is important because a police officer's credibility is at the heart of their ability to do their job. And their job includes writing police reports and providing sworn testimony. If a police officer with noted credibility issues is called to testify in a criminal case, prosecutors are required to notify the defendant in that case. This is based on the Supreme Court ruling Brady versus Maryland. And the transmission of this information about an officer's lack of credibility is known as Brady material. However, since Officer Hernandez has no credibility issues in his personnel file, no Brady material, just the violation of Fourth Amendment rights, any future criminal case involving Officer Hernandez becomes easier for the police and prosecutors and harder for the defendant. You see how that works? Police conduct an internal investigation and raise no credibility issues about one of their own, and that way the police officer doesn't taint other cases. It is outrageous and gets to the heart of the institutional incentive that many police departments have for burying or hiding police officer misconduct. In this case, the misconduct also includes the officer's own parking situation. Remember, the original problem for police was that Ibrahim Shahiber put his car in a red zone along the curb, a no parking zone. But instead of calling a tow truck or allowing Shahiber to move his car, the police double parked their cruiser literally in the intersection, blocking part of the street. If Shahiber's action was so dangerous to public safety, how can police get away with an even more egregious parking job? Well, here's the answer. This isn't about parking. It's about a police officer with a dangerous chip on his shoulder who wanted to assert his power over a guy who was just trying to pick up a sub sandwich. And even though Internal Affairs found that Officer Brett Hernandez violated the man's rights and lied about the incident, Hernandez gets only a 10-day suspension because God forbid the police department actually shows some real accountability.